All right, so as I mentioned, my name is Corey. I'm the Program Support Manager here at Safe Routes Partnership. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I'm joined by my two wonderful colleagues, Becky Gilliam, who's a Program Support Manager based in Silverton, Oregon, and Brittany Jones, who is our Communications and Equity Manager, and she's based in Bennettsville, South Carolina. So just a few Zoom norms and housekeeping issues. If any of you are new to Zoom, you should be on mute right now. Obviously, for the group discussions, feel free to come off mute and chat, and with that, it'd be a time for you all to connect with each other and have great conversations. So feel free to unmute in our breakout groups. You can join via audio or video for today. And if you have any questions, feel free to submit them in the chat box. So we have 6 breakout groups for today, and you all will be allowed to choose your breakout groups. So Becky will talk a bit more about that before we open up breakout groups, but you will have a choice, which is exciting. Choices are nice. So once you enter your breakout group, you can stay in that room and chat with people. Sometimes people get kicked out of breakout groups. If that happens, just jump back into the main session. You should be able to rejoin on your own, but I'll also be around in case there are any other breakout group issues or questions. You can also raise your hand in the breakout group if you want to bring in myself or Becky. So we're around to help out with breakout groups if you need assistance. We'll also come back together after breakout groups close. So we'll give a little 1-minute reminder to wrap up your conversations before we head back to the main meeting room for some next steps and final questions. So that's it for breakout groups. Like I mentioned, Becky will share a bit more about that before we head into them. And just our quick agenda for today. So we just did our welcome and introductions. Brittany will be sharing a bit about our Back to School 2021 communications resources, which is a really exciting resource bank for you all. So she will kick us off with that presentation. Then we'll have a great presentation from Portland Safe Routes to School, and we'll learn a bit about what's been happening in Portland, Oregon over the past year or so. Then we'll move into our breakout group discussions and then end with our closing and next steps. And someone asked about posting the link for the presentation. Yes, it'll actually be a Zoom link, so I'll make sure that it's sent out to you all via email and also posted on our website. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Brittany to talk a bit about our new communications resource.
Okay, thank you everyone. Like Corey said, my name is Brittany Jones and I am the Communications and Equity Manager for Safe Routes Partnership. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so we can talk about a new resource that we've created for you guys. Let's see. Can you all see this?
Yep.
Okay. So we have been listening to feedback from you guys about what you needed to convey your message of Safe Routes Back to School to your communities. And with the increase in students returning to in-person learning for this school year, we know that your programs are ready to engage the students, the parents, the teachers, the administrators on the benefits of Safe Routes to School. So to assist you with getting that message back about back to school, we've created a back to school messaging guide that contains some sample social media posts, templates for social media graphics, and promotional flyers to help you effectively communicate and market your program. So this is sample social media posts that come in the messaging guide, and we'll go ahead and link to the messaging guide on our website. So whenever you go to look for the recording of this presentation, the messaging guide will also be there under the resources. So the first part of the messaging guide I said is the 7 social media posts that you can alter in any way that you need. Each of these posts was created using a really great tool for messaging that we released in our launch 1 of our Safe Routes Back to School campaign called Why Safe Routes to School is an Essential Part of Reopening. talking points for Safe Routes Back to School. And I would have to say that the best strategy that I can give you in using these sample posts is start with your why. And each of these is highlighted. The first part is highlighted in blue. The second part, your call to action, is highlighted in black. So instead of just trying to get people to come and join your walking school bus or your bike train or whatever program that you have going on, you need to convey your why. So if your community's main concern for your students is that they've been isolated and they've lost social connections, instead of just saying join our walking school bus, you might look at bullet point number 3 that says increasing the number of interactions with families and neighbors by walking and rolling through neighborhoods can build and reinforce positive social connections. Help support our safe routes to school by walking or biking to school. Make sure you lead with your why. And that resource that we released last month has all different areas of concerns that your community might have as it relates to COVID, as it relates to attendance, and benefits that Safe Routes Safe Routes programs offer to combat those concerns. So even if you want to go and look at that resource, you can look at some of those facts and pull those to create your own social media posts outside of these. But these are a good starting point. Each one of them builds off of a different topic. The second part of the resource guide is social media graphics. And I know a lot of you don't have someone who can design graphics for you, or maybe you just don't have the skills to do it yourself, or you don't have the time to do it yourself. So we've created 3 graphics that can be customized to fit your program. And these graphic templates were created in Canva. For those who are not familiar with Canva, it's a free, very user-friendly online graphic design platform that allows you to create social media graphics, presentations, posters, documents, and other visual content online. There's also an app that you can put on your phone. And the app includes templates for users to use, but you can also create your own templates, which we did and we shared with you. So everything on here that you see, all of the text in the slides, you can change and customize to your program. You can take our logo off, add your program's logo, and keep it in a standard template, and it will be there. And if you want to duplicate that and use, let's say you like the third design best, you can keep using that template over and over again to run your own campaign for your program. And then the last part of the messaging guide is the promotional flyers. And just like the social media graphics, we created these promotional flyers that are customizable for your program. And these were created for you to be able to use with Adobe Acrobat Reader. So all of the text that you can see is really easy and simple. You click and type, and you can replace all of the text that you see on these flyers so that they are customized to your program. There's also a spot on each of the flyers for you to upload your program's logo. It's very easy to see that on the first flyer in that upper right-hand corner. You would click in that box and it would give you the option to upload an image or your logo for your program if you needed to. But this resource guide will be included, like I said, on our website and with the link for the recording of this presentation. And that concludes my presentation, Corey.
Thanks, Brittany. I appreciate it. Thanks for putting that together and for sharing that with us. And like Becky mentioned in the chat, we'll be including Brittany's presentation and the full communications guide in our follow-up email. And I'm going to go ahead now and pass it over to Becky to introduce our wonderful speaker for today.
Thanks, Corey and Brittany. Can I get a thumbs up that you can see my slide okay? Awesome. Great. Well, hello, everyone. My name is Becky Gilliam. I'm a program support manager with the Safe Routes Partnership based out of Silverton, Oregon. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing our speaker for our webinar, Zhao Zhang. Zhao uses she, her pronouns and is the Transportation Demand Management Specialist for the Active Transportation and Safety Division at the Portland Bureau of Transportation, or PBOT, in Portland, Oregon. Zhao has a Bachelor of Arts degree in Transportation Planning from the University of Oregon. She has spent the last 6 years supporting students in the Safe Routes to School program throughout the Portland, Oregon metro area. And as a youth advocate, Zhao believes youth empowerment and leadership in community engagement is essential for creating the world that we want to see. We are so excited to hear Zhao's presentation today and learn from her experiences and programming with PBOT in the Portland metro area over the past year plus. So please welcome Zhao, and I'm going to hand it over.
Hi, thank you so much, Brittany. Thanks so much, Corey and Becky, for having me. Again, my name is Zhao Zhang with the Portland Safe Routes to School program. I want to start off with a land acknowledgement before I go into my presentation. And the Portland metro area rests on traditional village sites of the Multnomah, Wasco, Cowlitz, Klamath, Clackamas, bands of Chinook, Molalla, and many other tribes who made their homes along the Columbia River, creating communities and summer encampments to harvest and use the plentiful natural resources of the area. And I take this opportunity to thank the original caretakers of this land. So good morning from Portland, Oregon, or afternoon, wherever you're at. Again, my name is Zhao Zhang. I think I've said that 3 times now, in case you've forgotten. I use she, her pronouns, and as our facilitators mentioned, I am one of these Safe Routes to School coordinators with the City of Portland at PBOT. So today I'll be sharing a little bit about how our team engaged with students in the first year of the pandemic. We may have some time for a Q&A afterwards, but feel free to ask in the chat, and facilitators feel free to stop me and ask any questions if that seems like best. So this is the amazing team, the talented team that I am privileged to work with every day. You may be familiar with some of these wonderful people. As you can see, we're a very fun group, judging by our Halloween costumes in the past years. But before the pandemic, much, if not all, of our engagement and programming was in person. So for example, you can see in these photos, we were meeting with students and school staff around active transportation, education, and wellness, bike safety education, preparing for our in-person high school focus groups, and hosting students who are learning more about transportation here in Portland. So when the stay-at-home order came into effect last March, all of our in-person work came to a screeching halt, as you can imagine. So I, along with probably everyone here, asked myself, so now what? What do we do? If you watch the TV show Friends, you are familiar with this moment where Ross is just screaming pivot. And that's literally how life felt for me, and I know most of my team in April 2020. And my response was very similar to Chandler Bing's response, which is wanting life and Ross to just stop, just shut up and stop screaming at us. I like to think that if we were a Friends episode during early quarantine, it would have been called the one where they just cried a lot to their computer screens. That was definitely me and some folks on my team. So what did Pivot look like for us? One, we started to help deliver food to families. We worked with a local organization called Street Trust to deliver food on bikes to families who were uncomfortable coming to school, to the lunch sites, or they couldn't make it for multiple reasons, but still needed food. And in Portland, we weren't the only ones doing this. Our local organization, like Community Cycling Center as well, was doing this too. Our team was really inspired by Finola Quinn, who is the founder of Discover Traffic Gardens, to create hands-free traffic playgrounds so that students can still practice riding and rolling and have a hands-free playground. And so that process was very interesting. Our team made a combination of cold calls to places like churches or places with large parking lots that were closed since they couldn't gather in person. My colleague Lale worked with community-based organizations and housing developments. And we also worked with schools, of course, to create these spaces. And these photos are photos of children who came to use the space right after we had installed them. We also had signage that spoke to public health and personal safety following our local health department guidelines. And we also included safety tips and easy reminders as well. And so here in Portland, we painted 13 playgrounds, which gave families and youth space to safely play and socialize while keeping some social distance. And they're a really great tool for community engagement and safely brought people together during a time of isolation. Our team also created a lot of virtual content. My colleagues Lolly and Kareen helped to create really cute and safe videos, including translations using these traffic playgrounds that we installed as an educational tool. And of course, we moved all of our educational materials online so that schools can still use them during distance learning. We also, my colleague Abra led this wellness program called Recess, which stood for 6 categories: refresh, energy boost, city explorer, extracurricular, strength, and stretching. And so it was for 6th to 9th graders that participated, and it focused on mindfulness and physical activity while schooling from home. So essentially giving yourself a recess break. You know, now that you're learning from home, it's not as structured as, okay, now we're going to stop learning and take a time to just relax and take a break. And so how this worked was when it was time to take a break, students would choose one activity from this recess category, do the activity, write it in their recess tracker, and do that for 4 weeks. And then they would mail it back to us to be entered for a prize. And this was an example of went for a walk, read for like 30 minutes, followed a YouTube workout. And so it was really nice being able to get all of these photos back of students, you know, out and exercising and doing it in their living rooms or in their rooms. And it was really heartwarming to get these quotes back from parents saying that, like, my student is spending so much time on the screen, and so any time away is really great, and that this has been a really great activity and motivator to keep students moving and to get exercise. So that was one program that we were really happy to be able to put on, and huge shout out to Abra on my team and additional folks who were able to get that going. In addition to that, the City of Portland has committed to being an anti-racist institution, and last year adopted anti-racism as a core city value. And so as we're looking to lead with our work with racial equity, in order for us to dismantle the very institutional and systemic racism that has been upheld through all of our history, we worked with a consulting firm called Equity and Results and implemented a framework called Racial Equity Centered Results-Based Accountability. So it's a mouthful, but this is an anti-racist framework that begins with impact and backs into solutions with to ensure that they are selected with an eye to root causes of the inequity. And it requires organizations to ask ourselves 3 questions. How much are we doing? How well are we doing it? And really, is anyone better off because of this work? This is a part of a very rigorous 7-step process to making sure that people and communities of color, especially, equitably benefit from the work that we're doing. Essentially, this framework helped us to look and really reflect on not only the work that we've been doing, but also looking at who is impacted by all of it and looking at how we hold ourselves accountable to transformation for racial equity. And with that, even taking a step further back and looking at historically, how have people, in particular, Black, Indigenous, and communities of color, how have they been impacted by our work? And we're constantly asking, why are they impacted that way? I know I'm just explaining it like this, and I don't know about you all, but transformation is not like this easy process, right? We're not just able to like stand there like Cinderella and just have her ball gown transform at a flick of a magic wand and end up with this beautiful dress, this beautiful program. It's really hard work. We're still in the middle of all of it. If anything, for me, I felt like we were more like the little mice trying to figure it out and sort all of it out, and feeling really small, a little frustrated. But as hard as it is, this reframing has been invaluable for our team as we work to support the most impacted families and students. And we continue to use this framework as our city moves forward on leading our work with racial equity. And of course, we talked a lot about personal safety. Safety is not new for us, but we saw just how impacted BIPOC communities were in the thick of our global health crisis. On top of that, a viral and cultural pandemic it felt, and on top of trying to make it, day to day with work and life and kids and families. As a woman of color, as an Asian woman, there are really no words to describe the immense pain that our communities felt seeing, our community members, our elders experiencing violence just on their daily walks. And as a transportation professional, the multiple levels of despair was jarring, just felt on so many levels. And this violence really impacted all of our community members. We've heard how our parents are worried about letting their children go back to school this fall, back to in-person school due to the uptick in violence. And I share this knowing that, that we recognize this is a huge concern. This is not something that is just central to Portland, Oregon. It's not something that one program can address alone. So we worked with our larger division here at PBOT to see what is it that we could do right away, right? What are things that we could be promoting? And so we created a social media messaging toolkit to share with our larger division, really uplifting our community experts and their expertise and resources, knowing that, we are not the experts when it comes to personal safety and bias and hate in the public right of way. We are an ally, we are an advocate, but we are not able to be the ones to solve all of it. It definitely takes a village. And so on top of that, we're also investing a lot of our staff time being connected to several working groups around community and personal safety, and being invested outside of our normal or our daily safe routes to school programming, really working with folks who are the experts in this. And as I mentioned earlier, we've been working on RBA, or results-based accountability for racial equity. We dug into that as a team, and that I think was the truly transformative piece too, looking together, how do we build this accountability to lift these burdens that have been impacting Portlanders, especially our BIPOC families and students. And so these are just a few examples of the social media campaigns that we were putting on, and the messaging, how to care for yourself if you experience hate or bias in the street, and really calling out the experts, whether they're local, national, how to interrupt this behavior if you see this as a bystander, and how to be an upstander. And of course, just educating yourself in what does all of this mean? What does all this look like? Really looking at the history of it and what you can be doing as an ally. I'll quickly go through these last two youth engagements. These were probably my favorite last year, and I'll share a little bit about why. We had our virtual interns for the first time. All of our interns at the past have been in person, who've come into the office, and we were really privileged to work with three amazing youth interns, Amrita, Noah, and Santiago last year. And they interned with us from July to December of 2020, so a good chunk of last year. And we were able to collaborate across multiple work groups within our division to give our interns a variety of experiences, even though they were remote. And so they got to work on projects like video creation for safe routes, but also Sunday parkways and our Bike Town bike share expansion. They were among some of the first youth to ride these new e-assisted bikes, which was really exciting. And like I mentioned, a majority of this internship, they were done remotely, but there were a handful of socially distanced in-person events, such as filming riding Bike Town, as you can see and read that there on the right. It was really exciting that we could create these spaces to help curate, community building for them to work together and navigate through technology, through different work styles, so many layers on top of having different, work styles working, from home. And it was super impressive to see them be able to come together and work so cohesively. It was Santiago's first time in a job apparently ever, and it was such an honor to be able to make a good first experience for him while in a pandemic. And like I mentioned earlier, our experience was amazing with this. We were able to offer jobs, and that just felt really good, during the pandemic where a lot of people were losing jobs. It was awesome to be able to provide a somewhat normal experience like an internship and still be teaching skills and provide opportunities where students can be connecting and building on their resumes. It just felt so good during a time of loss and somewhat standstill. And on top of that, it was also really great to be able to collaborate across groups where we haven't been able to before. So this was such a win for us. And we also like to think hopefully a win for the students as well that participated. And finally, we also hosted 2 virtual transportation academies, is what we call them, which was a really cool partnership between PBOT and a local high school in getting students PE and English credit in a 6-week class or academy. We had around 20 students participate in this pilot where they rode for 60 minutes, 5 days a week. Huge shout out to my colleague Roshan Kurian and the Bike Town team here in Portland for getting our students on bikes. Students were in this virtual class 2 days out of the week, and for the rest of the days they were riding and also in class for the English credit. And PBOT staff led this virtual class every Monday morning. So for their English project, we had them work on what's called a photo voice project called My Street, My Photos, My Voice. And for those who aren't familiar, photo voice is a qualitative method used to document and reflect reality. This allowed the students to document what they saw and experienced as they were out riding, walking, and rolling during their PE time. We asked students to document their answers to questions that we provided around safety and what inspired them as they traveled. And I'll just show some quick examples. One of the questions was, what does safety look like? And here's how one student responded during their PE time. It looks like things like roads for a bike, sidewalks, and street lights. And so instead of just, seeing the answers and reading the answers, we were able to see like cool pictures like this of urban, skating with my friends, taking a walk up to our beautiful Mount Tabor Park. We got to see these photos in action. And these programmings with youth were really special because we were able to provide education and support to youth in a way where they also directly benefited on top of learning, whether that was building their network, getting paid, and or receiving school credit for participating. So we're still in a pandemic, right? This is not over yet. How are we moving forward? Our schools are slowly starting to shift back to in-person. We're hearing from most of our school districts that they will be back in person this fall, and there will also be some hybrid options. So we're ramping up to support these schools with back to school messaging, making sure that parents and youth feel supported and heard. I mentioned earlier in my presentation that we were ramping up to host high school focus groups. We were able to do that virtually this spring. And so we're implementing what we've heard and our findings to influence our high school programming for Vision Zero, Safe Routes, and overall transportation work. We are also continuing to host high school transportation academies this spring, hopefully with the same local high school, if not more. We are also continuing to host virtual youth interns. David, who's also on this call, our newest intern, just started earlier this week. And so really excited to have him join. And finally, the pandemic has been really hard for all of us. It's taken us a little bit to get our sea legs, but we're slowly celebrating our wins, whether they're big or small as a team. The people that I work with are incredible and passionate, and we only made it through this year in our program due to the unrelenting support that we have for each other. And just it's so important to stop and celebrate life together, with this past year that we've had. So that's all that I have to share today. I know I went through it really fast. I don't know if there are any questions that popped up, but happy to talk a little bit more.
Thank you, Zhao. I do see one comment in the chat from Laura that they'd love to learn more about biking and PE pilot that incorporated photo voice. So Zhao, if you're open to dropping your contact info in the chat, sure. I'm sure folks would love to connect on some of these great examples you've shared.
Yeah, for sure.
Go ahead. There's one more question from Jill.
I saw that. Yeah, feel free to send me an email and I'm happy to follow up on both the PE and biking pilots and also the recess program as well.
Great. Thank you, Zhao. Really inspiring to hear about your work and your team's work. in really leading with racial equity, centering personal safety and health, and responding to the most pressing concerns in your community. So just really, really appreciate you taking the time, and also amazed by your ability to continue an internship program and lift up communities of color owned businesses while continuing some really transformational programming. So just really appreciate all the work and your hilarious GIFs as well, or GIFs that you've submitted in there as well. So
thank you. Thanks, everybody.
okay, I'm going to share my screen quickly, and we're actually going to be going out into breakout rooms shortly. So the rest of our session is reserved for connecting with others in those breakout rooms. We have 6 for you to choose from. These are topics that were determined based on a survey that some of you may have participated in. So thank you to those who participated in that, as well as general inquiries and feedback that we have been receiving and hearing from the field. So in a moment, we're going to open those breakout rooms. You'll be able to select which topic interests you most. You'll also have the option to move between those breakout rooms. So just in a moment here, I will share a link to a Google Doc that will take you to this landing page that you see on your screen here. When you get to this Google Doc, you'll be able to select the breakout room discussion topic that you're in, and you can follow along with some suggested discussion questions. So the topics for today's discussion include communications and marketing, promoting safe routes to school during back to school, building relationships, re-engaging communities during back to school, creative partnerships, working with new partners to implement safe route to school, and funding safe routes to school, identifying short-term and sustainable funding solutions. Breakout Group 5 is engineering solutions, reimagining the built environment during back to school and beyond. And finally, we have a breakout room just for folks who are starting a brand new or just getting off the ground with their Safe Routes to School programs during back to school 2021. So like our last back to school Zoom session, we are not going to be facilitating the discussion today, but we have provided some guiding questions for each discussion topic. I'm putting in the chat now a link to our Google Doc. So select your breakout room, follow along with those proposed discussion questions. We also invite you to take notes as a group if you'd like, share your contact info so folks can follow up with each other as connections come up. Safe Routes Partnership staff will be circulating between rooms if we can be helpful. And I think that's all I had. Corey, are we ready to go out into our breakout rooms?
We are. I'm going to go ahead and, if all works as it should, I'll go ahead and open the rooms. Like Becky mentioned, y'all should be able to select which room you want to go to. If you have any other questions, we'll hang back for a few minutes in the main meeting room and make sure that people get where they need to be. So okay, so you all should be able to see the room options, and you should find a little link that says join, or a little note that says join. So go ahead and hop into whichever room you'd like to be in. And just make sure everybody gets in. Okay, and I see a few of you don't see any of the room options. Give me 1 second. Also, if you don't see a room option and you just want to send me, if you want to send me which room you want to be in, I can also place you in one. I don't know why it's not showing up for everybody, but I'm happy to place you. Just let me know which which room you'd like to be in. Lots of room 1. All right. Thanks for your patience, everyone.
Corey, I can also start adding some folks kind of working backwards if that helps.
Perfect. Thank you.
I also just pulled up the breakout rooms in case anyone was having difficulty finding which one is which. So feel free to put in the chat if you haven't already.
All right, that should be everyone who sent in a message, but if you're still not in a group and would like to be, feel free to send a message over and we'll get you in the right spot.